Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Hello and welcome to the news. At least 10 Palestinians were wounded, one of them severely, during clashes with Israeli forces in the Balata refugee camp near Nablus. Israeli occupation forces raided the camp with dozens of military tanks and vehicles, occupying several houses and knocking down walls during a house-to-house search operation. In Beijing, the Chinese foreign minister called on the two parties in the Middle East to end the violence during a meeting about the Palestinian issue being held in Beijing under UN sponsorship. He said that the United Nations should play a greater role in supporting neutrality and international justice. Russian officials said that a group of Chechen rebels released 11 hostages in the Republic of Dagestan, which borders Chechnya. Using helicopters, federal forces began a search operation in the area to find the rebels. According to reports, the rebels entered Dagestan from Chechnya. 3 missiles fell in the Afghan capital of Kabul, nearly 10 kilometers from the Loya Jirga Assembly headquarters. The missiles were launched north of the capital this morning, falling in a residential area, causing one house to collapse. The local population said that no one was killed. A coalition forces spokesman said that the 2 fighters were killed and 3 others were arrested during clashes in the village of Shikin near Kabul. In new developments in Iraq and following the arrest of Saddam Hussein, the U.S. forces killed 11 Iraqi assailants attempting to set up an ambush in the city of Samarra, west of Baghdad. A U.S. soldier was killed earlier when a U.S. military vehicle drove over an explosive device near Baghdad. In a similar explosion in Tikrit, 3 U.S. soldiers were wounded while patrolling the city. Operations against the U.S. forces are increasing in different areas of Iraq, despite the capture of former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Some of these attacks hit their intended targets, while others fail, as was the situation in Samarra. The U.S. forces killed 11 Iraqis attempting to set up an ambush, meanwhile asserting that none of its soldiers were injured. In Tikrit, the situation differed. 3 U.S. soldiers were seriously wounded when their vehicle exploded while patrolling the city.
My commander and I
expected that the attacks against us would increase after capturing Saddam Hussein. The same thing happened before, when Uday and Quraie were killed.
These operations were not limited to the U.S. forces. In Fallujah, a cargo train carrying supplies to the U.S. forces was attacked by a missile, setting it ablaze. The U.S. troops immediately secured the area and rushed to put the fire out. Area residents, however, found the train to be an easy loot, ransacking it and emptying it from its contents. In other parts of the city, hundreds of people protested Saddam Hussein's arrest. Some of the protesters entered the office of the mayor, who was appointed by the United States. They destroyed the contents, set the office on fire, and then hung pictures of Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi flag on the rooftop of the building. The U.S. Army announced that they killed 4 Iraqis during a demonstration in Ramadi, supporting Saddam Hussein, adding that U.S. soldiers opened fire after protesters attacked governmental buildings and hung Saddam Hussein's pictures on the walls. Now, to a report by Hamza Hussein from Ramadi.
The situation is heating up in Ramadi and its surrounding areas, especially after seeing images of Saddam Hussein with his scruffy hair and messy clothes. The Iraqi public is angry and divided over this issue. Some are concerned, while others don't care. Meanwhile, other people are furious, sensing an American scheme behind it. Some Iraqis, however, still don't believe it, perceiving Saddam as a legend and that he has not been captured yet, such as the people of Ramadi. Chaos overwhelmed the streets of Ramadi, and everything came to a halt. It all started when a rumor was spread saying that the former Iraqi president, Saddam Hussein, is not in U.S. custody and has yet to deliver another speech. It was like lighting a match in a haystack. People took to the streets, damaging anything in their way, such as the city's political party headquarters. They marched forward to the municipality building, but the U.S. forces were still far away. However, when they approached the Thawra al-Adat area, the U.S. soldiers opened fire. The U.S. forces opened heavy fire at demonstrators, killing 4 children and wounding many others. Then they raided the city, and with the help of the Iraqi police, conducted wide-scale search campaigns. In addition, the U.S. forces cut the electricity in the city for security purposes and to punish the citizens. In the morning, everything was over. What remained was the blood of those who died during the horrific night. The issue will not be easily resolved. Saddam Hussein's 35-year-old image cannot simply be replaced with a few seconds of footage. Thus, Saddam Hussein will remain a point of disagreement for a long time to come. Hamza Hussein, Abu Dhabi Television, Ramadi. Reactions among ordinary Egyptians to the arrest of Saddam Hussein varied, but there is a general agreement that it will not stop the Iraqi resistance. Egyptian academics and thinkers called on the Iraqi people to unite in this crucial transition period for the sake of Iraq and the Arab region. After seeing images of Saddam Hussein being captured on TV, reactions among ordinary Egyptians, writers, and political analysts varied.
The true image of Saddam is what we saw on TV, not the images we had of him in our minds. He is not the powerful man who threatens Arab leaders with invasion and the world with weapons of mass destruction. What we saw on TV is the truth. We were fooled. Saddam is a man without capabilities. But unfortunately, some countries launch a media campaign conveying a wrong image of Saddam.
Saddam was an Arab leader who was concerned about all Arab countries.
Capturing him is not a problem because of the things he did to his people.
The demonstrations that took place in the Iraqi streets to express the happiness for the arrest of Saddam Hussein also generated reactions in Egypt.
I can't say that these demonstrations reflect the feelings of all the Iraqi population. Of course, some Iraqis who were hurt by the ousted President Saddam Hussein were happy to see him arrested. Some Iraqis may have participated in these demonstrations for other reasons. Objectively, I can't say that these joyful demonstrations reflect all the Iraqi people. They reflect the feelings of one segment of the Iraqi population.
Joyful demonstrations against the resistance? I don't think so. The objective of the resistance is to fight the occupation, not to bring Saddam back to power.
How will the Iraqi resistance react to this news?
The objective of the Iraqi resistance is to fight the occupation, not to bring Saddam back into power.
Some of the Iraqi resistance may be from Saddam's Fedayeen, or the former army that was led by Saddam Hussein. However, I'm almost sure that Saddam did not play a role in the resistance.
What about the presence of the American and British forces in the Iraqi streets?
The American forces came to liberate Iraq from Saddam's regime. Now, since the liberation has been achieved, what is the justification for the continued presence of American forces in Iraq?
Capturing Saddam Hussein will be a winning card in the American presidential election of 2004. However, the true motive behind the presence of American and foreign forces in Iraq will be disclosed, because the resistance will increase. The resistance should increase. Why will it increase? To prove once again that it's a nationalistic and not led by Saddam Hussein.
After the capture of Saddam, there is a fear that a civil war may erupt, giving the U.S. a justification for staying in Iraq under the pretext of maintaining security.
Of course, the arrest of Saddam Hussein will increase the control of the American forces on Iraq. However, so far it is not clear how the resistance will react. Mustafa Kafafi, Nile News Channel.
Former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein is captive, but the fighting continues, and at least a dozen Iraqis were killed and 3 U.S. servicemen injured in the latest spate of violence. Now, the New York Times reported that Saddam told U.S. interrogators that he had not been leading or organizing attacks in Iraq. He also denied that there were weapons of mass destruction. We get more with Dana Ramadan.
A third day goes by after the capture of Saddam Hussein, and still there are no signs of a let-up in attacks on occupation forces. U.S. troops killed 11 Iraqis who tried to ambush their force in the town of Samarra, north of Baghdad. A military statement said the attackers were loyalists to the former Iraqi leader. The statement also said U.S. forces suffered no casualties in the incident. However, in Tikrit, 3 U.S. soldiers were wounded when a roadside bomb hit a military patrol. The injuries were described as not life-threatening. Iraqi violence also flared in Fallujah, 50 kilometers west of Baghdad. A train carrying supplies to U.S. forces in Iraq was set on fire outside the flashpoint town. Witnesses said the train was attacked by rocket-propelled grenades and 1 wagon caught fire. There was no evidence of casualties. Meanwhile, Iraqis took to the streets with mixed feelings, with some cities witnessing anti-Saddam demonstrations, while others held pro-Saddam demonstrations. More than 1,000 people marched through the streets of the southern Iraqi city of Basra, calling for the death penalty for Saddam Hussein. Carrying pictures of Ayatollah Muhammad Sadiq al-Sadr, who was assassinated by Saddam with his 2 sons in 1999, the demonstrators vowed revenge for his death. In Baghdad, too, demonstrators marched chanting slogans and calling for a public trial for Saddam Hussein for crimes he committed against the Iraqi people. Carrying pictures of Shiite cleric Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim, people in Baghdad were celebrating the capture of the former Iraqi leader. However, the city of Mosul told a different story. Hundreds of Iraqis took to the streets marching and chanting pro-Saddam slogans and carrying pictures and posters of the former dictator. Last night in Fallujah, witnesses said hundreds of residents protesting at the arrest of Saddam rioted, overrunning the office of the U.S.-appointed mayor. The demonstrators stormed the building, broke up furniture, computers, and air conditioning, and then destroyed documents. They later set fire on the contents outside the building and hung up 2 large pictures of Saddam Hussein and Iraqi flags from the rooftop. But despite the continued attacks and demonstrations, the U.S. Chairman and Chiefs of Staff Richard Myers paid a surprise visit to Baghdad. Myers, who said he did not meet Saddam, held a press conference and said that Saddam would hurt the anti-coalition bombings.
I think there will be some intelligence that we get from the capture of Saddam Hussein. That will be analyzed and worked over time. And I think right now it's inappropriate to speculate on what we might find in terms of his involvement. But of course, there will be intelligence value to the fact that he is now in coalition hands.
U.S. forces have so far kept the ousted 66-year-old dictator at a secret location for interrogation ahead of a trial, which a key Iraqi judge said would not start for months. But General Ricardo Sanchez, the commander of the U.S. military in Iraq, said Saddam was being treated as a prisoner of war.
I think what we've said is that he is being accorded all of the rights of a prisoner of war. He is being treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention, and we will continue to do so.
Furthermore, a spokesman for the former opposition group Iraqi National Congress, Intifad Qambar, said Saddam Hussein will face a fair trial.
Saddam will be handed to the Iraqi Governing Council, and the Iraqi Governing Council will put Saddam through a fair trial in accordance with the special law that came out from the Governing Council last week, which is formation of special court responsible for trials of crimes against humanity, war crimes and genocide crimes.
However, there was another voice that wanted to be heard. In an interview aired by the Dubai-based Al Arabiya news station, Saddam Hussein's daughter, Ragad Saddam Hussein, claimed her father had been sedated during his capture. She said, quote, "Any respectable person who knew him during his leadership and his resistance and his power would realize that the person on TV was a sedated Saddam Hussein. Do you believe that they could have caught him unless he was sedated?" End quote. Ragad said the family wanted her father to be tried by an international court rather than a special tribunal which was set up by the Iraqi Governing Council last week, and added that as his daughters, they have a right to defend him. 8 months since the fall of Baghdad and 3 days after the capture of the former Iraqi president Saddam Hussein, and violence is still on the rampage in Iraq. Dana Ramadan, Jordan Television.
Iraqi Interim Governing Council President Sayyid Abdulaziz Al-Hakim said Saddam Hussein could face the death penalty, and Iraqi leaders hope to have a court ready to try the former Iraqi president in the first months of 2004, insisting that a quick trial is essential for Iraqis.
The head of Iraq's Governing Council, Sayyid Abdulaziz Al-Hakim, said on Monday that Saddam Hussein could face the death penalty if convicted of serious offenses. Al-Hakim's words came after a meeting in Paris with French President Jacques Chirac.
There will be advisors, international personalities who can be present. The sessions will be in public and the rights of the defense will be respected.
Members of the Governing Council said that the trial would be televised in the interest of exposing Saddam's atrocities and beginning a process of national healing.
There's no difference between what the coalition authorities want and what the Governing Council wants. Saddam Hussein will be tried in Iraq. We have just started preparations and measures for this trial to happen within 2 to 3 months. In fact, we have already started preparing a group of Iraqi judges to take charge of these procedures and took the necessary steps to establish this tribunal.
The Washington Post reported Tuesday that the 3 months timetable is faster than U.S. officials had anticipated, but Iraqi officials insist a quick trial is essential for Iraqis. Governing Council member Muwafaq Al-Rubai stressed that the trial is an integral part of national reconciliation, adding that the process cannot begin until what he called the man at the top is brought to justice. But U.S. Governor of occupied Iraq Paul Bremer told the Iraqis a court appropriate detention facilities would have to be established before Saddam would be handed over to them. Germany had a similar stand to the Iraqi position, as Foreign Minister Joschka Fischer said while in Egypt that captured Saddam should receive a fair trial to put what he called the truth on the table and speed up reconciliation in Iraq. Fischer added that due to Saddam's crimes against his own people, it would be understandable if he would be tried in his country. This position is gaining support from many countries and international law experts.
The fact is that if it's an international tribunal, the chances are that it will not apply the death penalty, because that has been the experience of all international criminal courts that have been set up since Nuremberg in Tokyo. However, if in fact this were to be a domestic court, and there is no reason why domestic court shouldn't apply international criminal law, then there is no reason why, if in fact it is the wish of the Iraqi people, if it is the wish of the government, that the ultimate penalty should be paid by he who caused so much agony to so many millions. There's no reason why that penalty shouldn't apply.
UN Chief Kofi Annan dismissed the idea of trying the former president at the UN-sponsored International Criminal Tribunal in The Hague because its jurisdiction is not backdated to the time when Saddam committed his crimes. The London-based Al-Quds Al-Arabi reported that Saddam's sister Nawal Ibrahim Al-Hassan wants her brother be tried before the World Court. She said that Saddam was drugged by U.S. troops before his capture. Nawal's husband, Arshad Yassin, a former officer in Saddam's Republican Guards, is also detained by U.S. forces and could also be tried.
Israeli occupation forces shot and injured 5 Palestinians, including a 12-year-old boy. The boy was seriously wounded in the head by a rubber bullet during an Israeli raid into a West Bank area near Nablus. 50 Israeli armored vehicles and tanks, backed up by 2 helicopters, moved into Balata refugee camp. Israeli troops seized 4 multi-story buildings and carried out a house-to-house search. At least 6 Palestinians were arrested during the raid. Residents later hurled stones at the troops. Also in Jenin, around 15 armored vehicles stormed into the eastern neighborhood last night and surrounded a number of homes.
What happened in Nablus today and what happened in the past in Jenin and Tul Karam and what happens in other Palestinian towns and in Khan Yunis yesterday, the demolition of homes and killing of innocent civilians, all these issues do not help the situation. The Israeli government must seriously be willing to stop all these attacks.
يعني لا تساعد على الإطلاق وعلى الحكومة الإسرائيلية إذا كانت راغبة جدا.
Quraie's words came as he discussed the revival of a so-called peace plan with U.S. congressmen at his office in the West Bank town of Abu Dis, hours before the arrival of an Egyptian delegation for a second round of ceasefire talks with Palestinian factions in Gaza. 4 days of talks at the start of the month in Cairo did not secure an agreement. The factions demanded that Israel take as well reciprocal measures. The 2-day talks will involve Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other factions. U.S. envoy David Satterfield held a joint meeting Monday with Israeli and Palestinian officials in occupied Jerusalem. State Department spokesman Richard Boucher said that during the meeting, Satterfield demanded that Palestinians take steps to end so-called terror. He made clear that both sides have obligations and responsibilities. According to Boucher, the delegates discussed permits, checkpoints, closures, movement in general for Palestinians. Israeli sources said they could also pave the way for a summit between Premier Ariel Sharon and his Palestinian counterpart Ahmed Quraie. The Ma'arib newspaper reported that Israeli Premier Ariel Sharon is considering the evacuation of all Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip and some isolated settlements in the West Bank as part of a unilateral plan if talks fail with the Palestinian people. According to the Daily, Sharon's plan involves an army redeployment under which the whole Jerusalem area, including the eastern Arab sector, would remain under Israeli control, as would the West Bank settlements of Ma'ali Adumim, Ariel, and Gosh Etzion. Ma'arib also said that the Gosh Qatif block, a cluster of settlements which occupies most of the southern Gaza coastline, will be dismantled. The head of Hamas Politburo, Khalid al-Mash'al, said the resistance remains the only option for liberating the occupied Palestinian land. Marking the 16th anniversary for the establishment of the movement, Mash'al said the Geneva Initiative and all previous agreements aim at eliminating the Intifada and the Palestinian cause.
أولا مضاعفة الجهود وتصعيد المقاومة.
First, to intensify efforts, escalate the resistance, strengthen and bolster national unity so that we could remain united in facing the occupation, the enemy of all. Second, to be aware of all the conspiracies and poisonous projects and not to drift towards it. The architects of these projects and initiatives, whether they were Palestinians or not, must come to an end because they are contributing in misleading our people and aborting the resistance and the sacrifices of our people. Third, all forces, political factions, national and Islamic figures and the brothers in the Palestinian Authority, mainly Fatah, should seek to organize the internal Palestinian situation, taking into account that we should cling to Palestinian rights and strengthen the steadfastness and the resistance of the Palestinian people.
أعيد
The Maxine restaurant in Haifa was reopened after 2 months of repairing damages caused by the ugly terrorist operation that killed 21 people and injured dozens of others. Our reporter Wasim Kouaf visited the restaurant and prepared the following report.
We are still very sad. The atmosphere is not that of happiness. We're still very affected. Everyone is working with tears in his eyes. We will not forget the 21 people that were killed here.
These were the words of Tony Matter, one of the restaurant's owners, when he entered the place for the first time after the ugly terrorist operation happened. Despite the fact that the restaurant was reopened today, feelings of sadness overshadowed all its workers. Every corner reminds them of the loss of their dearest friends.
Physically, the restaurant is now better than it used to be. However, psychologically, I will always feel emptiness. The loss of my relatives and friends can never be forgotten, even after a long time.
When I entered the kitchen, I remembered what happened on the 4th of October. I wish that God did not let this happen. I wish that things stayed normal. What can we do?
Dozens of residents went to the restaurant to support the owners, especially on a day like this one. Today might be one of the happiest days for most of the customers, who considered it as their warm living room for the past 40 years.
I don't feel that there is a difference between Arabs and Jews. The Jews speak Arabic and Arabs speak Hebrew. We live in a community and we have 100% coexistence.
The incident left us with a big burden. Its memory hurts us. It's even difficult for us to think about it. It's hard to imagine how people can come to this kind of situation. It's very difficult.
The ugly terrorist operation that took place in this restaurant on the 4th of October, when the terrorist, Hanadi Jaradat, entered detonating an explosive strapped to her body, killing whole families and injuring many others. Maybe these wreaths and candles that can still be seen near the restaurant are an indication of the magnitude of this catastrophe that we witnessed 2 months ago.
There are feelings of sadness and joy. We did not forget them and their families. We will not forget what happened here. Such wounds are hard to heal. However, life must go on. That is the strength of this state and society.
One of the loyal customers who escaped death at the last second insisted on coming back to this place. He was very emotional.
I was here on the day of the attack. I never thought that this place would go back to the way it was. Tony has managed to rebuild the restaurant after all that happened. I admire Tony for what he has done since that day. I hope he faces success.
Despite the catastrophe that happened here, everyone believes that the key to achieving peace is opening dialogue and negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. They are hoping that their leaders will meet with them, because every day they prove that Palestinians and Israelis can coexist.
If our government officials come here and see how we are living together, it will only take half an hour for them to be convinced.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.